In this section, we're going to use the sine and cosine ratio to calculate unknown sides. So, in the first example, which you have some steps to help you on the side, find the length of QS to the nearest tenth. First of all, QS means the line that's between the point found at Q and the point found at S, which is right here. And I sometimes like to just put a little X there because that's the guy we're looking for. Step number 1, let's label our information like we always do. Now obviously this is the angle we're standing at, and today we're actually given the size of the angle, we're not looking for it. Your second side label is your hypotenuse, which is over here. Your opposite, which is directly across, and your adjacent. We have to decide which formula we're going to use, sine or cos today, and in the future you'll have to pick between sine and cos and tan. So let's write down what we know. We have an angle R, and we have a hypotenuse. What are we looking for? We're looking for QS, and QS obviously is our opposite. We need to find out which formula has an angle, a hypotenuse, and an opposite. And again, let's write our acronym. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so ka. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, toa. Tan is opposite over adjacent. And I need a hypotenuse and an opposite, and that looks to me like it's going to be sine. So let's write down our formula for sine. Sine of angle A is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. Step number 3, let's fill in the formula with the information from our triangle. In this case, we know the size of our angle, and angle R is 43 degrees, so that's going to go right here. The opposite we don't know is called x, and the hypotenuse we do know is called 16. Now our next job is to figure out what to do to this. Sine of 43. You need to remember that if you have a letter here, you're going to use your second or your shift button with sine. But if you have a number here, you're just going to go sine of 43 without the shift button. And so in this case, when you hit sine of 43 or 43 sine, depending on your calculator, to 4 decimal places, you get 0.6820. And that equals x over 16. You need to remember from a couple sections ago, the trick to solving this is to first of all put this over 1. And then we're going to cross multiply. So again, cross multiply means that these two multiplied together equal these two multiplied together. So x times 1 is x is going to equal 16 multiplied by 0.6820. Now, we're asked to find our answer to the nearest tenth. So you always want to use that particular piece of information in your very last step. Not anywhere up here are you rounding to the nearest tenth, only in your last answer. When I multiply these and rounding it off, I get 16.0. This is 2.5 part 2, and we have another example where we're asked to find the length of each side to the nearest tenth. Use sine or cosine, not tangent today, to find the first side, and use the Pythagorean theorem to find the second side. So, using our steps from up above, you can't see them on my sheet, but you should see them on yours. Label all of your information. So here's our angle up here. We're standing at angle G. Now it gets a little tricky when it's a skinny triangle like that, but our hypotenuse is directly across from the little box. And again, we're standing up here, so this side is our opposite. And I've covered up part of my 4. And this side right here is my adjacent. Let's make a list. The list is very helpful. So what do we know? We know that angle G is 9. And sometimes I even put it right over here just so I know. And I know that the opposite is 4. not 4 degrees, just 4. And I want to find both sides. So I can take my choice if I want to find the hypotenuse or the adjacent. But because I'm asked to use sine or cosine, we should find our hypotenuse first in this case. So our question mark is going to be the hypotenuse. Which formula is that? Again, SOHCAHTOA, make sure you spell it right, is sine. So sine of angle G, or in our formula, sine of A is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. Angle A in this case is angle G, which is 9 degrees. The sine of 9 is equal to 4 over, and I don't know the hypotenuse, so let's go back over here and let's just call it x to keep things simple. Again, the math gets sometimes tricky here. Just keep in mind that at this point, I don't want to use the second or the shift button for sine. I just want to punch it in, and I'm going to end up with 0.1564 is equal to 4 over x. I want to put this over 1 like I always do, and I want to cross multiply. This time the x is going to go with that decimal, and the 4 is going to go with 1. And I'm going to end up with 0.1564x is equal to 4. My job is to get the x by itself. So this 0.1564 needs to go. To get rid of it, I'm going to divide both sides by 0.1564. And I'm going to end up with an answer of 25.6. Now you'll notice that I don't go to the nearest tenth, so the nearest tenth is that. Now to use the Pythagorean theorem to find the second side. Keep in mind that when you're using the Pythagorean theorem, this is A, this is B. The most important thing is to call C the hypotenuse. Now how long is the hypotenuse? Well, we just found that. The hypotenuse in this triangle then is going to be 25.6. We know that one of our other sides is 4. Let's call this one 4, and let's say we don't know what B is. The Pythagorean theorem says that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. A is 4 squared plus, we don't know b, so we're going to leave it as b squared, equals 25.6 squared. I end up with 16 plus b squared. 25.6 squared is 655.36. Your job is to get the b by itself. And this 16 is the first thing standing in its way. So I'm actually going to take both sides, and I'm going to subtract 16. You can write that in a separate step, or you can write it like this if you want to. The 16 minus 16 is going to be gone. It turns into 0. And I'm left with b squared is equal to 639.36. Now the b is almost by itself. It has a little square up there, though, and that needs to go away. The only way to get rid of a square is to square root it. Now when you do that, the square root and the square essentially cancel out, and you're left with the b. However, you need to be fair. Whatever you do to one side, you need to do to the other. So we are going to have to square root this number as well. And we end up with 25.3. So our one side is 25.6, and our other side is 25.3.